From autopilot to awareness, small shifts toward a more supportive way to eat. You may notice that when people hear the phrase mindful eating, it can bring up a lot of different reactions. For some, it may sound calm and supportive. For others, it may feel intimidating or like another thing they're supposed to do right. I'm putting that in air quotes. Today, I want to set the tone clearly from the beginning. This is not about perfect eating. It's not about slowing down every bite forever or becoming hyper focused on food. Mindful eating is simply a skill, one that helps support intuitive eating, awareness, and consistency with time. As we move through this, you may notice moments of recognition. You may connect some dots. You might notice some resistance creeping in, curiosity, or even discomfort. All of that is welcome. Awareness always comes before change. This learning module is structured to give you both understanding and practical tools. We'll talk about what mindful eating is, how it differs from mindless eating, and why it can feel hard to practice, especially in real life. We'll also explore several awareness tools in part two of this recording. And these tools are not rules. I want you to think of them as options that you can experiment with, revisit later, or set aside entirely if they don't fit right now. The goal here is not to walk away doing all of this at once. The goal is to build awareness and begin noticing patterns, because noticing is what creates choice. Before we go any further, I want to take a minute to introduce myself, especially if you're new here or this is your first time hearing me teach. My name is Ginger, and I'm a certified personal trainer and a level 2 precision nutrition coach. My work focuses on functional movement, nourishment, and really helping people build habits that actually support them as they age, not just for now, but for the long haul. Most of the women I work with are in midlife, and they're navigating some form of transition, whether that's hormonal shifts, changes in energy, changing roles in life, or simply realizing that what worked in earlier decades doesn't seem to work the same anymore. I also come to this work very personally. Before I was a coach, I spent about 2 decades as a flight attendant. During that time, I was raising my children, working full time, working on the side teaching group fitness and personal training, volunteering for the PTA, and honestly, I was burning the candle at both ends. My schedule was really inconsistent. My stress was really high. My habits around food, sleep, and self care were often shaped by survival rather than support. I've lived in that space of doing my best, pushing through, and realizing later something had to change. That experience deeply informs how I coach today. I'm not interested in perfection, quick fixes, or strict rules. I'm interested in helping people build consistency with compassion, meeting themselves where they are, especially in real life, especially when things feel messy or hard. If there's one thing I hope you take away about me, it's this. I've walked this road myself. I understand how complicated change can feel. It's messy. And my goal is always to help you feel supported, not judged. All right, we're going to dive in. By the end of this learning module, you'll have an opportunity to increase your awareness of how, when, and why you eat without judgment. Better understand the difference between eating on autopilot and eating with awareness. Explore how stress, environment, and expectations influence eating patterns. Become familiar with a variety of awareness tools that can support a more intuitive way of eating. Identify one or two small shifts that might feel supportive to explore next. And by the end of this, you're not expected to be a mindful eater. Instead, you may notice you better understand the difference between mindful and mindless eating, how hunger and fullness cues show up for you, and what tends to pull you away from awareness. And if you walk away with one insight about yourself, one small moment of recognition, that's meaningful progress. So let's talk about food decisions. It's something we really don't often stop to consider. Have you really ever given thought to how many food decisions you make in a single day without even realizing it? Research suggests it can be hundreds. What to eat, when to eat, how much should you eat, how much time do you have to eat, where should you eat, often layered on top of busy schedules, lots of stress, and we're crunched for time. And this is not meant to make you feel overwhelmed by me pointing that out. It's meant to normalize why eating can feel so complicated. When food decisions pile up, the brain looks for shortcuts. That's where mindless eating often enters, not because of a lack of discipline, but because of mental load. Understanding this helps us approach eating with more compassion and less self criticism. Now, eating with awareness, mindful eating, intuitive eating, all of these terms are not about restriction, but about awareness of nourishment, enjoyment, hunger, our fullness, and our preferences. This includes giving yourself permission to enjoy food, acknowledging what you like without judgment, and using wisdom rather than rules to guide decisions. Importantly, mindful eating does not replace intuitive eating, it supports it. It helps you hear your body's signals more clearly, especially in environments that tend to drown them out. The core principles of mindful and intuitive eating, which sets us up. So, mindful eating really sets us up to become more intuitive about our consumption and our choices. And those core principles are bring awareness to the nourishing properties of food through the process of food preparation and consumption, to select enjoyable and nutritious foods, to acknowledge food preferences without judgment, and give permission to enjoy fun foods. If you've taken wellness nutrition class with me, you know I love to really focus on planned indulgences and let go of the guilt. We want to, the core principles also recognize and honor physical hunger and our satiety cues, and they use wisdom to guide our eating choices and our eating decisions. So you may notice here the mindful eating cycle invites a lot of questions. It invites curiosity rather than control. It asks questions like, why am I eating? When do I want to eat? How am I eating? Am I hungry? These questions are not meant to make you feel like you're interrogating yourself or put you on trial. They're simply invitations to notice patterns, especially the ones that happen automatically without conscious choice. This is also a good place to notice, how do you talk to yourself when you start paying attention? So that awareness can help us tune into, how are we talking to ourselves? Many of us are really practiced at curiosity paired with criticism. We notice something, maybe we're eating quickly, we're shoveling our meal down, we're snacking without even being hungry, we're reaching for food under stress, and almost immediately that harsh inner voice jumps in. That little inner critic raises its hand and starts whispering in your ear. And it might sound like judgment, frustration, or placing blame on yourself. And if you've noticed that voice, there's no need to argue with it or try to shove it down. The first step is simply noticing it. Ah, there's that inner critic. From there, the goal isn't to flip the script right away to something overly positive or motivational. Instead, it can be helpful. We want to work towards flipping that script, but that takes time and practice. So, in the meantime, see if you can shift towards a more neutral observation, something calm and factual. So instead of like, maybe you just downed a pint of Ben and Jerry's, and instead of thinking, oh, such a look at you, you're a pig, why can't I control myself? A neutral shift might be, I ate that a lot faster than I even realized. Just noticing what happened. And maybe, you're eating something and that voice in your head says you shouldn't be eating that. You might try, I notice I'm eating this and I'm really not even hungry. It's just about building that awareness muscle in the beginning. Neutral does not mean permissive. It means accurate. You're just simply accurately noticing, and that accuracy allows awareness to grow without the shame cycle kicking in. It's also important to remember that many of us eat for reasons beyond physical hunger. We may eat for comfort, connection with others, stress, relief, celebration, and that's human. The goal of mindful eating is not to eliminate those moments, but to notice them with compassion. And when curiosity is paired with kindness rather than criticism, our nervous system stays calmer. And when the nervous system feels safe, learning is easier. Even a small shift from judgment to neutral awareness can quiet that inner critic and open the door to more supportive choices over time. You may notice how easily mindless eating can happen in modern life. Eating in the car while scrolling on your phone, standing at the kitchen counter, or finishing food without even tasting it. You may finish it and be like, oh my Lord, I just wolfed that down. I don't think I even processed the taste of a single bite. That doesn't mean you failed or you suck, that something has gone terribly wrong. It usually just means, you know what? Our attention is being pulled elsewhere by stress, distractions, fatigue, or a time crunch. Mindless eating is not a character flaw, it's a signal that our nervous system is busy doing something else. You may notice that when it comes to eating, many of us swing between extremes. On one end, there's the mindset of constant denial, trying to be good. I'm putting that in quotes, holding back, pushing through cravings, really, saying you've got to buck up your willpower or telling yourself you shouldn't want certain foods, they're off limits. And on the other hand, there's the feeling of just giving up entirely, eating reactively, quickly, or past the point of comfort because it feels easier in the moment. Neither extreme tends to work well long term. What we're really looking for is a balance, a middle ground where food can be enjoyable and supportive without it becoming this battleground. That middle ground is not about perfection or strict rules, it's about flexibility, building our awareness, and learning how different choices actually feel in your body so that you can choose to make empowered choices. You may notice that balance doesn't look the same every day. It's going to change with your stress levels, how much you're sleeping, the quality and quantity of that sleep, your social situations, and your energy levels. And that's not a problem. That's just factoring in real life. So here I have a model of the hunger scale, and we want to meet somewhere in the middle. But this middle can feel really unfamiliar to a lot of people in the beginning. Many of us, myself included, were never given permission to eat to light satisfaction, to stop eating when we feel comfortably nourished but not full or stuffed. This concept never occurred to me until I was really a student trying to better understand nutrition and behavior change for my clients. And I realized, wow, I have a lot of work to do on myself. So the concept of light satisfaction, it might feel, if we're tapping into sensation side of things, it might feel like you're energized enough to move after you eat a meal, or you think more clearly after a meal. You're not in this like heavy brain fog. Or maybe it means that you can go about your evening without feeling weighed down and needing to go unbuckle your pants. It might mean that you could check in and you could eat more, but you don't need to because you are satisfied. Now, for some people, thinking in sensations can feel really helpful. But for other people, it just feels odd. And numbers can provide a helpful reference. And neither approach is better. They're just different ways of learning. We all have our own unique learning styles and skills. So it's about learning to listen to our body and what resonates better for you. Does eating to like a 5, 6, or 7 feel good? Or does eating to those sensations feel better? So what matters most is the middle ground is something you can tap into and try to create awareness around practicing. It's not something you're going to achieve once and then just maintain forever. It doesn't work that way. Some meals are going to land there easily, and other meals are not. And both are part of the learning process. You may even notice when you truly want to change your eating habits, even when you understand what is going to support you best, it can still feel surprisingly hard to follow through. And this is where it helps to understand what your brain is actually designed to do. Your brain's number one job is not to make sure you're healthy. It's not to make sure you're disciplined. Its job, its primary role is to keep you safe. From a neuroscience perspective, our brains are marvelous, but they're constantly scanning and predicting what's going to happen next based on past experiences. It's scanning for threat. It's trying to conserve your energy and trying to keep things really familiar because familiar patterns feel safe. Even the ones that don't serve you anymore, they feel safer to the brain than unfamiliar new patterns. So when you try to change how you're eating, or you're trying to change maybe slowing down that food consumption or tuning into your hunger and fullness or stepping out of autopilot, your brain may interpret that as uncertainty. And that uncertainty can feel a little unsafe. That's why change often brings up some resistance, some discomfort, some pushback, frustration, or that urge to go back to old habits, not because you lack willpower, but because your nervous system is doing exactly what it's designed to do. You may also notice that when stress is high, this effect is amplified. Elevated cortisol pushes the brain further into protection mode. Our attention narrows, and that brain prioritizes immediate relief over long term learning. In those moments, awareness, curiosity, and intentional choices become much harder to access, including around food. And this is really important to understand. When change feels hard, it does not mean you're failing. It means your brain is trying to protect you and keep you safe. And that's where how we approach change really matters. So I want to talk now about shrinking the change and how it helps us work with the brain instead of against it. You may notice that one of the most effective ways to reduce resistance is not to try harder, but it's to make that change smaller. You ever tried making something really easy? It's kind of hard to talk yourself out of it. And research on habit formation and behavior change shows us the brain relaxes when a change feels really tiny. It feels manageable, familiar, and repeatable. Big change feels threatening. Small change feels a lot safer. When a behavior is small enough, it no longer feels overwhelming to the emotional part of the brain, so there's less resistance and a bit more willingness to try it. It doesn't need to brace, resist, or shut down to keep you safe. Instead, it can stay a little more curious and engaged. This is why shrinking the change matters so much, especially when you're working on awareness-based habits like mindful or intuitive eating. This also comes into play if you're trying to develop, let's say, a daily movement habit, and you're trying to just increase movement on a daily basis. And I'll use walking, for example. If someone has generally no walking habit whatsoever, and they don't really have a method of tracking walking, I would say start at 5 minutes a day and then work to build up to 7 minutes a day. Once you're doing that for 2 weeks really consistently, every day, 7 minutes, go to 10. If someone does track their steps and maybe they're getting 3,000 steps a day, don't shoot for 8,000 or 10,000. Shoot for 3,500 a day. So make these little tiny steps. Now, if we're going back to eating, instead of trying to eat mindfully at every single meal, you might simply notice your hunger before one meal a day. Start there. Or instead of slowing down your entire meal, give yourself permission to try to pause for the first 3 bites. Instead of changing what you're eating and overhauling everything at once, you might just observe, how does stress affect your appetite? These small, repeatable actions send a powerful signal to the brain. Hey, this is safe. Oh, nothing bad is happening. The system didn't fall apart. I'm just noticing things. I'm just trying some really small things. And over time, consistency, not intensity, will help that brain update its predictions. Repeated small wins reduce perceived threat, and awareness becomes easier to access, and new patterns begin to feel familiar. And this is how lasting change actually happens, not through force, willpower, restriction, or perfection, but through small actions practiced consistently enough that our nervous system begins to trust them. So if you notice resistance, frustration, or an urge to just go back to old habits, that's not a signal you need to be pushing harder or summoning up more motivation or willpower. It's a cue you actually need to try to go a little smaller. So, shrinking the change isn't lowering the bar. I want to point this out. It's choosing a starting point that your brain can say yes to. So, up to this point, we've been focusing on awareness, understanding why eating can feel hard, how our brain responds to change, and why small shifts matter. In part two, I'm going to introduce you to a set of awareness tools. I want to be really clear about how to think about these. These are not rules. This is not a checklist, and you're not meant to use all of them at once. I want you to think of these tools you're adding as tools you're adding to a toolbox, this figurative toolbox. Some may feel immediately helpful and some may fit not at all right now. And some may be tools you want to come back and visit later. The goal is not to master tools, it's simply to become familiar with them so you have options when you notice patterns showing up in your life. And you can apply this to things beyond food. As we move into tools, I want you to see if you can stay curious. You're just noticing what resonates and what doesn't, and that alone is more than enough. I'm going to give you a companion workbook in part two that goes along with this presentation. It's completely optional, but it's there to help you reflect, integrate what you're hearing, and decide which tools you might want to experiment with now or later. So congratulations, you have now completed the first part of our module on From Autopilot to Awareness. And if you found this part of the session helpful, I want you to know this is just a small preview of how I teach inside of a longer program I offer called the Consistency Project. The Consistency Project is where we take ideas like this and practice them over time, gently, realistically, and with support so they actually fit into real life. I wanted to share this portion with you as a way to experience the style, tone, and approach I use in my programs. If you'd like to learn more, you can visit my website at www.gwanko.com, and you can explore whether it feels like a good fit for where you are right now.